Legends, welcome to the Culture Standard. I'm Bo Vernon and I'm here with my co-host Chris Andres. We're breaking down the best ideas from books, podcasts and people. And boy, do we have a guest for you today. How you going, Chris?
Yeah, good mate. I'm super excited again for this one. But yeah, I'll let you introduce our guest today.
Yeah, so we're big on not what people do, but who they are as people. And this person I have met a few times. I don't have a real close relationship with, but have met a few times, and just their authenticity, genuine care for people and kindness has really stood out to me. And yeah, I'm really stoked to have Peggy O'Neal join us. As such a wonderful person, I could list the number of things she's done. You know, she's a lawyer by trade. She's, current chancellor of the RMIT Uni, and obviously Richmond Football Club ex-president, and took the Tigers to three premierships and really turned the culture of that club around, and pioneer for women, first female president of an AFL club. Peggy, great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was quite an introduction. I don't have anything else to say.
No, I genuinely mean it when I say it. Like, you know, I was just at a couple of luncheons and functions with yourself, and it was just obvious to me that your care for people, and when I spoke, you just made me feel really valued and appreciated, and your listening skills and ability just to communicate to everyone on the same level was really shone through to me, and just showed me what a great person you are.
Well, thank you.
And also being a great Richmond supporter, like seeing the culture of the club really turn around at the club. So yeah, it's been great to watch you pioneer for women, especially having a daughter myself. Just want to start off with a bit of your background, who you are, and where you sort of come from. You grew up, obviously American.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, from the States, and do you want to give us a little bit about your background?
Okay. I did grow up in the States in a tiny town up in the Appalachian Mountains. My father was a coal miner when I was born, and my grandfather, my uncles. It was a tiny town of about 125 people where I was born, and the town no longer exists because mining sort of collapsed and when oil sort of took over, and we moved to a metropolis of about 500 people then. But where I grew up, it was pretty tough in those places, yep. But a real sense of people having to watch out and take care of each other. And I think in lots of small towns, that's what happens, is everyone can appreciate the other person's situation. And so there was a great community kind of feel to it, looking back on it. I then went through all of my primary schooling and secondary schooling in tiny coal mining towns. My father wasn't a coal miner any longer. He became a truck driver. My mother was a volunteer at school, but through the whole thing, the value of education was really imprinted on me, and both of my parents valued education, and even though they hadn't been able to sort of accomplish what they wanted to do that way, they made sure that if my sister and I wanted to, that they were going to do what they needed to do to sacrifice to get us into university and all of that. And in the States, it's quite a big undertaking to pay for that. Yeah. But somewhere along the way, they always managed to encourage us and to say, if you want to go, we'll find the money. I don't know how they did it. But especially my mother wanted for us the things that she didn't have, and she saw education, as she would say to me often, it changes lives and families in a generation. And if we can do that for you, we'll give you an education, and then you're sort of on your own.
Yeah.
So
seems like the investment's paid off.
Yeah. Well, as a result, I loved school.
Yeah.
I remember that my mother read to me from well before you can read as a. And I think wonder what it was about her that she started collecting books and she started reading the little books to us and to me and my sister and I remember at one point she thought it was really important that we have an encyclopedia. Don't ask me why. And so it was like $5 a month and she'd buy volume by volume by volume. And I don't know if she thought we were going to sit around and read the encyclopedia together or whatever, but we needed to have this resource for school papers and things like that.
Yeah.
So, and anyway, after all of that, I did go to university about 3 hours away from where I was living.
So you live on campus for that, or?
Yes. So I lived in a dormitory, and I was 17, and never lived back at home again after that.
Yeah,
you'd go back for holidays, but you were sort of on your own. So I did my undergraduate degree, and then the way it is in the States, and sort of being adopted here in Australia too, is then you applied again to go to law school. So then I went into law school, and because I didn't know what else to do really, and I did all of that in Virginia, and I went to the University of Virginia and to Virginia Tech. And
how long's that all up? The undergrad and then law
7
school?
years.
Yeah, 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't like law school very much. I loved undergraduate school, bachelor's degree, but law school, I just didn't sort of get it for a while. And then, but once I got out and got a job and had clients and solving problems, I really liked that part of it.
Yeah.
And then I thought, growing up in the middle of nowhere, I was 21 before I saw an ocean. I know that's hard for Australians to ever believe.
It's hard. Like I grew up on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up on Phillip Island, eh? Like,
Yeah, that's right.
surrounded by it. We're so privileged.
And we had lakes and creeks and rivers, but hadn't seen the ocean. Saw the Atlantic Ocean when I was 21. And
What was that first experience like? Do you remember?
well, it was like, whoa, look how big it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't see across it. And so I was used to those things where you could see the
See the other
shoreline
side.
and all of that. And this just, but I guess all along the way, as I started, having more of an education, started reading more, starting being engaged with the world more, I thought, I got to travel. I got to see stuff. I didn't know anybody who had ever had a passport. I didn't know anyone who had gone overseas. But I finally managed to. My first overseas trip was to Jamaica. That wasn't too far away,
Yeah.
and then it just started,
Got the bug.
going all over Europe and.
It's shown up a fair bit in our podcast already. They're around learning from traveling and
Yes.
just discovering yourself a bit more, but then learning about other cultures and then finding out what's important to you
Just
a little bit.
gives you perspective a lot when you travel, especially Jamaica probably would have been eye-opening for you at that time.
Well,
it gives
it
you
was.
perspective on different ways of living and what we should be grateful for. And
Yeah, and it makes you feel a bit more self-sufficient because it was way before there was anything like, mobile phones,
Yeah.
because there was no way, other than the couple of people you might be traveling with, you couldn't call home, you didn't speak the language, and somehow we all managed.
Figured it out.
We managed it. And so you sort of think, oh, well, I got myself through this and I got to the right place and got the right transportation and I did all of
Figured it
this.
out.
And it was a big, growing up kind of experience, I suppose. And so along the way, I was in Greece in a bar and I met an Australian and then I moved to Australia. So,
Was that
as
simple?
everyone does, yes.
Yeah, good.
so how old were you when you came out here?
I was 35.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And so, I had been practicing law a while, and so I had to go back and get requalified to practice law here.
When you got here.
Yeah.
How long was
and
that? Another?
A year.
Oh, that's not too bad.
That there was 3 courses I was required to take, and they were both 2-semester courses, so there was no sort of shortcut to it. So I went to the University of Melbourne and got that, and didn't know how you applied for a job, didn't know anybody, but you sort of figure that out too. And I know that was probably pretty difficult. It's pretty, you're learning a lot, but it's pretty lonely when you don't have anybody to sort of talk to. I mean, I was married, but he was working and all those kinds of things. So you sort of think, oh, where's the...
Just didn't have that tight community.
Yeah, where's that 20-year friendship circle that you could get some advice or just say, oh, I just need to talk to someone. And so I thought I went from sort of knowing the ropes to a place where I didn't even know how to use the telephone. And I had never lived in a place as big as Melbourne. I never lived in a place with public transportation. So there was it's another big education. And I thought if you can just get a job and stick it out for a little while, it should be okay.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I have a couple of really good close friends here, and the three of us were American. We all came here about the same time, and we all got dual citizenship within a few months of one another. And we still all stay in touch and celebrate each other's birthdays. And we figured it about 3 years, if you work at it, you're more involved in where you are than where you left.
Okay.
And so you can sort of see a life that's, you've worked on developing another friendship network, you've gotten involved in community, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So anyway, we thought the 3-year point was the break-even point.
Okay, interesting.
But until then, I always kept a return Qantas ticket in my desk drawer.
How did you go about building that community when you got here? It's such a big city. So how did you go about building a community in such a large place?
Well, when I arrived, it was August, and having the bias of the Northern Hemisphere, I knew I had to go back to law school. I thought, well, it must start in September, just like it does in America. And they said, oh no, it's February. And I went, what am I going to do? Because I had thought you'd get right involved with school and and university, and that I didn't know how you did that, but that's what I was going to do. And so I thought, well, I come from a great line of volunteers, so I thought I'm going to volunteer and meet some people. And so I volunteered for Amnesty International because it wasn't too far from where I lived, and I could get a tram there. And I thought, I'm really interested in human rights and all that they had done. And so I started meeting some people there, and there would be little functions, and I'd go to that. I joined a gym. You meet some people there. My husband's friends, I started to see more of them. So it was just this incremental thing, but you really, somewhere along the line, I thought you're going to have to push yourself to get out there, even though you feel very conspicuous because you sound different.
Yeah.
And now I think I sound the same, and people go, no, you don't. So you can fool yourself into thinking whatever you want.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it. But I thought, if I can get a job, if I can get through this and then somehow find a job, then that'll be a real big step forward in feeling like part of something, because that gives you routine and you hope that you're pretty good at your job so that you can keep it. And so I went to university for that year, met people in class. I met a woman who was from Hong Kong who was doing the same thing I was doing, getting requalified, and she took me to my first yum cha. And we stayed in touch for several years after she went back to Hong Kong. Yeah. So it's, I guess I do have that curiosity about people, and so if you sort of ask people what they're doing or where they're from, people are usually happy to talk, and so it's just that incremental, not deliberate, other than telling myself, you've wanted to live in a foreign country other than as a tourist, and this is your chance.
It feels like you've very good at stepping outside your comfort zone at a young age. Like, some of those things would be so daunting for so many people, and I feel like a lot of people may, not do it because it's this big scary thing, and the world promotes safety and that I think far too much these days. And I'm guessing you had a lot of growth from those times.
I did.
From stepping out of the comfort zone, and
Back then, I think, as you mentioned, we didn't have technology, we didn't have the access to everything to make everything so easy. So back then, I reckon it would have been way more daunting.
Hard to fathom.
There was a mail strike. There was a the tram strike, the mail strike, wharfie strike, milk strike, something. And I was thinking, where have I come to? Because it was still, relying on regular mail, and nothing's being delivered, and you just live for those messages. And it was very, very expensive to call. It was like $1 a minute or so, U.S. dollar. And in fact, some friends of mine in the States used to have a dinner party, and they'd all put in $5 to call me so that they could. And I said, well, you do that, and that's easier than me trying to call you. But
no Microsoft Teams or Zoom back then, or Skype.
No Wi-Fi, no any of that stuff. Still having to use a typewriter for your papers and all of that. So it was looking back, it was difficult. But at the same time, I'd always sort of wanted to be somewhere else and to sort of test yourself that way. And I also think, over time, one of the things I've realized is if it doesn't work out, you just go back to what you did before.
Yeah.
It's scary. Of course, you want to do a good job, and you want to think that this is going to be positive, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And I've often said that the fear of failure is really just the sort of price of trying to do something meaningful. Yeah. It's and you got to get across it.
Yeah. We my family and we moved to Sunshine Coast 3 years ago. 3 years, so maybe building that community a bit more now. But even for us, like it was so daunting. I can't imagine halfway around the world doing it. Yeah. But we have the same belief of if it doesn't work out, you can just go back.
Yeah.
You might blow a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, you can just go back.
I think I'm more worried about not knowing when I try things, and I think that's why I'm like, no, I've got to try it. I've got to give it a go.
Yeah.
I think the worry for not knowing is bigger for me than failing, I think, which is...
Yeah, and I think sometimes the not knowing, you have to understand that sometimes you don't have to try all those things. It's like, nah, that's not for me. Sometimes that's as good as the things you do try.
Yeah.
Because you think, why am I going to take this on? And if there's no good reason, or you can't see that you're going to work with people that you respect, or you're going to be working on a project that you really want, is like, well, maybe I should spend my time doing something that I might not do, I might not know, and maybe I'll fail, but it's something I really want to be involved in.
For sure.
So I think that over time I've come to realize that you say no to things that just don't feel right, but might have a bit of, prestige or cachet, and you think, no, that's not for me.
Yep.
And sometimes you find yourself in the middle of situations, you go, why did I do this? And so be a bit more cautious about what you take on.
Yeah. Obviously, you went on to Richmond board in 2005, I believe, and then became president in 2000.
Because I lived in Richmond and I picked my team. And people were saying, oh, you should have been here when they were good.
Yeah. 1980, my father played for Richmond.
That's right.
1981 to 1985. He played 20 odd games. He did get 3 Brownlow votes one day, which was pretty good. But he said the next week he's starting on the bench again.
That's right.
Anyway, they had a pretty good team back then. And then obviously 2005 Richmond weren't the best.
No, that was one of those, do I really take this on? But I don't think they're going to ask again. And I had to start to become more interested in the business of football because I'd been a fan, and I'd been a player sponsor, and I'd gone to everything, and all of my weekends revolved around getting to the games. And back then, the law firm that I was working for was in the city, and all the infrastructure to work on the weekends was in the office. You didn't have laptops or any of that sort of stuff. So I'd go in really early so I could leave in time to get to the MCG at 2 o'clock.
How did you go understanding the game? Because there's not many people from the US.
It now?
I was going to say, do you?
True.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder, even for us.
Yeah.
Some of the 50s paid at the moment for the man on the mark stuff.
The holding the ball is gone.
Yeah, we've lost the plot there. I just don't know anyone from the US that actually understands it, they're like, oh, I don't know, it's just too
Well,
hard.
you watch a lot of it to sort of get a better handle on it. And at first it was, and maybe this is being the newcomer, this is what Melbourne talked about. And once I started in the law firm, I realized everybody had a team.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, well, there's a team with my suburb's name on it. I'm just going to go for them.
Lucky you didn't move to Collingwood.
I can't imagine that. And so then I thought, okay, I'll join the footy tipping just to sort of make me watch a few more games and understand. And so then I just watched a lot of it. But what the rules are, even when I was president and I sat with Brendan Gale for most games, I'll say, what was that for? And it's like, oh, no.
It is a bit like that.
But they come to appreciate just the athleticism and how big the ground is. That's sort of hard to conceptualize that kind of running. And that there's no offsides rule. That's what I kept saying, but why are they coming from that side? But after a while, you just sort of get to enjoy that there's all different sizes and shapes of people out there, and that it is an endurance. Every game is an endurance sort of test, I suppose.
Were you involved in sport in the US when you were there?
I was always a sports fanatic growing up, and my father, and it was just me and my sister, and my father always loved sports of all kinds, but grew up in a small town, sort of like small town Australia is, the local baseball team, the local football team, all of that. Was the big social thing as well. Yep. And in the summer, they would have like the local leagues, and my father he pitched baseball until in his 50s, I suppose. Oh, okay. And so I'd go along with him. Then he took up golf, and I was no good, and he refused to play with me anymore. He's like, this is taking too long. And I was happy to go home and read a book. So I was interested in that, and it's only when people have asked me this question in the past, I remember that I wrote a column for the university newspaper on women's sport, and because we had university competitions, not at the big level, but and so I would do the column about the ladder and who had played well. And I remember I got a promotion once to write about the men's football game, yes. And I was at Virginia Tech then, and they had a really good football team, and they're sort of a football school, and gridiron, and so I enjoyed that, and then sort of academics took over eventually and all that. But they had a league of touch gridiron for women, and I was a pretty good quarterback. Because bossy person, getting people in line and all that kind of stuff. So I did that for a year or so and all that. But there was no real organized sport for girls and women, and that's just sort of the way it was.
Yeah, so, it's come a long way in that aspect, hasn't it?
So I was a great spectator, and so I've just carried that great spectator role over to Richmond.
Yeah, awesome.
We'll delve into the Richmond stuff in a little bit, but in terms of, before we get into ask the questions that we usually ask our guests that we have on, just a little bit of what you're doing now and potentially some hobbies that you have or interests that you have, and work-wise, what you're up to and stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, as you said in the introduction, I was a lawyer by training, but I was a partner at Herbert Smith Freehills, and stepped down in 2011 because I thought I'd done just about everything I wanted to do with law. And
it's a pretty demanding job as well, isn't
it? Yeah, it is. And I was sort of at that point in my career where I was training younger lawyers all the time, and it sort of got into this rhythm where you didn't grow very much. It was like, where are the additional things you might want to do? So I stepped down, and because I'd done a lot of work in providing legal advice to boards of directors and those kinds of things, and I was also interested in government policy work, and so I thought, someone told me, which was good advice, until you quit being what you are right now, nobody's going to take it seriously that you want to do something else. Okay. So I went, okay, step down, see what happens, and I was contacted pretty quickly about, would you be interested in going through the interview process for this or for that, and so right away I got a couple of really interesting things to do, and then I went on to the board of my law background was financial services, superannuation, that kind of stuff. And so I went on the board of a couple of the big super funds. I also worked in the Secretariat for the federal government on the review of the superannuation system in 2010. That was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then in 2005, Richmond came along and asked if I'd be interested in going on the board there. Yeah. But right now, I'm now the chair of Vanguard Superannuation, and I'm the chancellor of RMIT, starting my 5th year of that. Yeah. And I sort of think, well, this is the education that was so important to me when I was approached about whether I'd be interested in, again, interviewing for this role. I thought, oh, maybe this is sort of the world turning back to where I was. Maybe this is, because I had also been Australia's appointee to the Fulbright Commission that hands out the scholarships. And I did that for a couple of years, and I thought, it seems this education stuff sort of coming to me now, sort of without any real design on my part. And I thought, well, this is what I'm supposed to do now. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do now.
RMIT was very good to me after I hurt myself.
Oh, really?
I was a tradie beforehand. I had done 18 months of a commerce degree, and then went to ended up just becoming a tradie. And post injury, I couldn't obviously go back to that line of work, and RMIT with their just made it so welcoming for me in my new situation. I can't move my fingers, so even holding a pen, and I didn't have my license at the time, so getting here and just getting used to my new situation and interacting with other people in my new situation was daunting, and RMIT was very good to me. I came here and finished off my Bachelor of Business degree, Economics and Finance, and just so accommodating and welcoming, and it was a great experience for myself, and really led to bigger and better things. So obviously you're the head of that now, and you're passionate about education, and obviously probably followed your passions of just how much you've loved learning over your journey, and being involved in that now is great. But just wanted to give RMIT a shout out for that.
Thank you. And I wasn't there at the time, but it's the kind of place that I like to think that's what we are, and it's good to hear from someone with your experience to say that that's the way that you felt, that we helped when you needed help.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to get into the questions now, Peggy. So
okay.
We asked our guests these 3 different questions. We're so big on extracting, 1 or 2 things from, a person or a podcast or a book, and I think it can really help shape you into the best version of yourself. If, like just from you already, you're just authenticity as a person from when I've met you, and just grabbing onto those different things. I was just wondering if Chris and I are on a learning journey ourselves to improve as people, and we're also wanting to pass on key messages to our listeners and audience. Would you have 2 maybe bits of wisdom that you've learned along your journey that you feel you could share and maybe could benefit our listeners?
Well, it's sort of difficult to try to distill stuff into what you've learned, because I've sort of learned something from lots of people.
Yes, for sure.
And but one of the things that occurs to me often as I sort of maybe evaluate new opportunities, what I do is be yourself, and that's really hard when you feel like people are telling you to be something else. And I think that until you feel, that you can express yourself, that you are you don't have to change for anyone, I think that is when you do your best work.
Yeah.
And that when you feel personally satisfied. And there's a saying that Oscar Wilde had that I love to quote, and says, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken."
Yeah.
And I always think That's right. You can't be that person. I think somewhere in your life, if you're fortunate, you cease envying anyone. You think, I envy no one. I'm just content.
Yeah, I love that.
In that way. And so I remember the point somewhere along the way where I said to myself, I think you've arrived. You're just content with, and it doesn't mean it's that way every day, but you think when you get that balance of who you are and what you want to do, and feeling like very optimistic, is it's a wonderful place to be, and it's not easily achieved. And I think you're always sort of weighing up, is what I'm doing in line with what I think I am, and so I think you're always working on it.
I think it's a great bit of advice because we're massive on living to your values. I think it's so easy for us to live outside our values now, and then we get frustrated the way we're living. But there's so many distractions nowadays, and I think that what you just said is a great bit of advice for people, because it's just so easy to go outside of that nowadays with technology, and social media is a big one. People are highlight reels, which we talk about. So yeah, I think that's a great bit of advice.
How do you arrive at being yourself? Do you think is there any tips there that you would say helped you arrive at being, one, you're such a courageous woman, and it's got to take courage sometimes to be yourself, but then maybe self-reflection or whatnot, of who we want to be? Yeah.
Well, I think what Chris was saying about your values and really spending some time thinking about that. It's not like you have to sit down and go into a quiet retreat and think about it, but it's like every day. Sometimes you can, if you're, I think, the least bit self-aware, it's things just jar, and you think, well, why am I doing this, or why am I around these people, or why did I think that this was what I wanted to do? And then you got to work on getting back to what feels like you, where you feel content. I always think happiness is a bit overrated. What is happiness? You're not going to be smiling all the time. But when you go, this is good, but I do think that it requires a bit of constant self-reflection on what are you doing and why, and is this who you want to be, or who you think you are. So I don't think it's easily achieved, and I think it's just a struggle we have all the time. And sometimes I also think that perhaps women in business roles get pushed a bit harder. It gets harder to stay who you are, because usually the sort of model is based on men in that business. And so it's like, do I have to be like that to do this, or that doesn't feel like me? And a great variety of women who do all kinds of things. But I think especially in my early days, when I was the first woman that had been hired in my first job in 100 years, I'd never had a woman lawyer. And I look back and I think, I didn't really know what to do. They didn't know what to do with me. We just sort of worked at it. I cried a lot. I'd go home and it'd be like, and you just knew, and it was, but everywhere was like that then. It wasn't anything wrong with them. It was just the whole world was getting used to more women taking on some of these.
It was quite a large law firm as well, wasn't it? Like, it wasn't like
and so it was a bit. So I think that there's a sort of an internal struggle about how much of yourself you give up to fit in, as opposed to feeling like this is the place I want to be. I'm not just fitting in. So so I think that's one of the things.
That's great. I just wouldn't mind delving into the courage, because for me, being the only woman in your law firm, being the first AFL president, and the courage it's taken to be yourself in those male-dominated environments is critical to me. And I think a lot of us, there's that self-doubt there, or imposter syndrome, some may call it. Is that just through you putting yourself out there over time and building deposits on the courage that you've learnt to be better, or what shaped that? What helped that? Yeah. Can you pinpoint something, or?
No. Well, I think some of it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. That you can't let the fear of failure hold you back.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, that when Richmond asked me if I was interested in going on the board, I thought they're probably going to ask again. And if you're no good at it, they're going to let you know.
Yeah.
And that's that. But you the club and the place it has in the community you care about, you think you have some skills to bring to it because of governance and law and all of those things. And I was had become more interested in the business of the whole league, because how come some clubs have money and other clubs don't, and how does this all, and that was back before there was the soft cap and all of those things. There weren't as many rules then as there are now, but Richmond was in pretty bad shape, and a lot of debt, hadn't won anything in a long time, and so I thought, well, sort of why not? Was it courageous? I guess you have to have a bit of self-confidence that you have something that is worthwhile bringing to the situation, to the circumstance. And by then I had been in law firms and been the only woman in so many rooms that I actually didn't even think too much about. I was the first woman, but it didn't occur to me that being the only woman in the room was going to be too difficult. And I thought, I've become numb to that because I've done that all along. And I don't think that's right, that I should become, that goes back to, is this who you really are? Are you really being able to express yourself as you would like? Or are you just fitting in?
Yeah.
So at Richmond, people were not, they asked me to join. So they were, I think, as welcoming as, it was sort of like with my first law firm. Nobody knew exactly what to do, but the assumption was my background and experience was the same as everybody else around the table.
Yeah.
And I was such an outsider. And for example, they would say, well, you need to go to the rooms, especially after we lose. I didn't know where the rooms were. I hadn't spent my childhood waiting on autographs outside the room somewhere. I didn't know.
I used to get Matty Richardson's and Wayne Campbell's out the front of the room.
And it was like, can somebody take me? Yeah. And then at Marvel Stadium, I wandered around for weeks trying to find a ticket. Well, it was Telstra Stadium, I think, then, or Colonial, or one of those. And so there was, it was more that there was no thought given to me about being anything special, as opposed to, well, you'll just figure it out and get on with it yourself. So it wasn't deliberate. It was just a bit thoughtless sometimes. So I could have fit in a bit, or understood my role a bit better, if I'd had a bit more of an induction. So one of the first things I did when I was on the board is I set up the induction process for the next person who came on, so that I think, what would I have wanted to know, and what would have helped me get up to speed faster. Yeah. And so I thought, I'll make something out of this. Yeah. Nobody else seems interested, but I am.
Well, I'm sure people like Emmett Dunn would thank you for that then, that have come after you.
Yeah.
That's
true. It got better and better, the whole process. So anyway, that's my little bit of legacy for Richmond.
Oh, fair legacy you've left. And so that's your first point there around. I'm throwing up blanks.
We went over a lot then.
About pieces of advice. Just one other thing I was going to say on that. Another something that I have sort of taken to heart is the do what you can when you can. And that means that some people hesitate, saying, well, what can I do? If the problem's too big. And it's like, you don't have to solve the whole problem. You just do what you can when you can. Yeah. And if you just move it a little bit, then somebody else, and then other people may join you. But I think a lot of societal problems are bigger than any one of us can do. But it doesn't mean we can't do something. Yeah. And maybe that's just speaking up when nobody else speaks up. Maybe that's taking that extra step to bring along somebody with you. But I often say you just do what you can when you can.
I think that's what holds us back a lot too, because we look at things and go, oh, it's too big, I can't change that. So we don't try. But as you said, if we just do little things, what we can, when we can, as you said, everyone chipped in, then you can solve the big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, but first time I heard that saying, and I've just appropriated for myself, was Elizabeth Broderick, who was the federal sex discrimination commissioner, and she was of course talking about how big the problem was. This is back, she started the Champions of Change for business and sport and all that. Yep. And she said, just do what you can when you can. And if you're in a role where you can do something, do it.
And that can apply for teams, projects. It can apply to an individual who might be going through a tough time. It's just building those little wins, I think, amongst ourselves. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why every vote's important.
Yeah. That's great. So is that your second point that you're wanting to make?
Yeah,
do what you can?
I think that's enough. I think we
Use that one.
covered a lot of stuff.
I love that.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
If you need another saying, that's one I think about it quite a bit.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, we're going through a stage at the moment. We both put whiteboards up at our house. We've both got 3 young kids.
Yeah.
So we put quote of the month up, and then we put you've got things that you want you're working on, each child's working on, and habits we're trying to create in ourselves and stuff like that. And so I reckon that might almost be one of the quotes that I'll put up.
Do what you can when you can.
Yeah.
No, real good.
I like it too.
Yeah. So the next question is around a hardship. Now, just whatever you feel comfortable sharing, Peggy. But the reason why we do this is every single person has challenges unique to themselves in their own life, and quite often with social media we just see everyone's highlights and everyone's going really well, but deep down everyone has different challenges at different stages of their life, and we really just wanted to normalise that so people don't feel alone. There's been, mental health numbers are probably, they are increasing. Some people in the football industry have lost their lives in recent years due to mental health issues, and we just want to normalise, that everyone has different hardships in their life. Are you comfortable sharing something there with us that has been a hardship for you?
We've already touched a bit on changing countries and feeling quite alone, and I also though at those times thought, think about people who immigrate, who don't speak the language, who don't have the education, who don't have the financial support. So what are you complaining about? But you feel like you feel, and you feel that you've got to make it happen and you've got to solve it yourself. But I found that really difficult. If I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am now, which is wonderful, and I love living here and all of that. But it's a big shift to change countries, even when you want to, as opposed to people who are fleeing war or famine or just trying to make a better life for their family. So I think if anything, it was a hardship, but it gave me great empathy for people who don't have the advantage that I had. Who
great perspective.
Who couldn't go into. I remember it was a very long, complicated process even to get permanent residency, and going into before anything other than paper, and going into the offices of immigration and standing there and waiting for hours because you didn't have an appointment, and I'd go up and I'd hand my next step, and seeing people around me who didn't understand what they were being told, but they were being sent away. You didn't fill out this right, you didn't do this, and I thought, well, at least I've made it this far. So that was a really tough period, and I found myself now saying when things are tough for whatever reason, or if something's coming up, it's just going to take a tremendous amount of energy to get through. I think, but that's what you need to get to the other side. If you don't go through this, it's what's in the way becomes the way. That this is what you have to do. And then there are all those sort of things that happen in most people's lives, death of parents, death of close friends, that those are, I don't think anybody escapes the heartache over time. feeling for, you wish things didn't happen. And I always say, well, there's nothing wrong with feeling sorry for yourself because nobody else is going to. But then you just gotta, get over it and go on. So
it's all right to have a whinge, I suppose, but you can't stay there for too long.
Well, and if you have the mental resilience, and I think I'm one of these people who I've just naturally been, and I credit my parents the way I was brought up. I've always had this feeling of optimism, and I just don't let myself, and I think it's just, sometimes it's just in your makeup. And when we talk about resilience, I think some things, to keep in perspective, are just things that happen to people in your life. And then there are things that are unique and horrible, but at the same time, you've got to try, and lots of times you need help, and I've asked for help over time for different situations, that you try not to give in to the hopelessness of things. And I've found that those normal things that happen in life, I remember when my mother died and thinking, I know all these people whose mothers have died too. And now I know what I feel like. And was I the best friend? Did I do what I could do for them? Because so many people did so many nice things for me. And I thought, gee, now I'm alert to what this feels like. Up until then, you're just sailing through. And so I think, it's another life lesson. And I don't think there's anything special about me, but it gave me, all along, all these situations, just give me more empathy for the human situation of other people.
Some things just tend to be experienced too, don't they?
That's right. Yeah, they do. So that was, that I think is just one of those, life is going to throw stuff at people all the time. And that's why having a circle of people that are looking out for you is really important. And if you need professional help, you've got to seek it out.
You said there's nothing special about you. I think there is, like, your ability to get perspective on situations just by talking through what you did then. You're talking about your hardship of moving over here, but then you think about others and their experiences and getting perspective on that, and empathy you learn, and then your mum passing and how kind people were to you, and then you question whether you were that. I just think it's such great reflection of on your life and perspective and empathy, and I really appreciate you sharing that. That is unbelievable.
While we're on that, I wonder, but I judge Bo as a really good judge of character, and in the past, even leading up to this, he told me that you're probably the kindest person he's met, one of, and you showed time for him and stuff like that, obviously today as well. Where does that stem from, your kindness? And is it a small community, or growing up in those small communities, because you all need to rely on each other? And because I'm massive on kindness. I think we don't show enough in this life. We're very distracted. So I just like to know more about that.
I don't know. I don't. You put a name to it, but I think a lot of it goes back to the way I was raised, and I remember my mother, who was the great volunteer. I've talked about her a bit today, but she was always saying, there's somebody else you can help. And I look back, and there we were in this tiny little town, and to go to the movie theater was 45-minute drive, and then there would be one show on a month or something. But for some reason, if we went, she found the money to take 4 or 5 other children who wouldn't have the money to go. And I go, where did she get that? Looking back on it, I thought, we didn't have any money, but she always had it. And then at Christmas, she was always the one going around putting all the hampers together for people. And I thought, why did she do that? Because she just did it. It was a wonderful example about, and she would say to me sometimes, you'd be whinging around as a 12-year-old, and she'd go, if that's the worst thing that happens to you in your life, you will be lucky. So quit it. And so for a teenage girl, it was like, you don't understand me kind of thing. But I think it was one of that get some perspective
Yeah.
on what it is. And that maybe that goes back to doing what you can when you can. I can't solve poverty, but I can make sure they have a good Christmas. Something like that.
And it's a lot of action, like, you know, rather than words. Your kids are what they see rather than what you say. I believe in your mum showing those acts of kindness, your mum volunteering, taking care of some other kids.
Yeah, my father coached the Little League teams, and anyway, it was just one of those. And maybe it is being a small town, and if I don't do it, who's going to do it? If not me, who?
Yeah.
And what is it? If it's going to be, it's up to me. And all these little sayings that come to mind now that you mention it, but I think there is just this idea of, you know, sort of the golden rule: treat other people like you would like to be treated. And so many times, you know, how you appreciate kindness extended to you, well, try to do that. If you can't extend kindness, say nothing. You don't have to be mean. The absence of meanness sometimes is like kindness.
Both Chris and I grew up in small areas, not as small as Killarney. Is that how you? Killarney. You know, Chris from Coronella, down near Phillip Island there, and myself from Phillip Island. We're both living on the Sunshine Coast now, which is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh wow! Yeah. Change of climate.
Yeah. So for me, like, moving away from that small country feel where I know the community, I'm entrenched in the community, has been quite challenging. You know, it's been great at the same time, but you know, I do miss that community. It feels like in Richmond you've built that community for yourself in a big city. You know,
I've turned it into a little town.
Like, is there any advice there for us on how you've built, and is there anything you do in particular that's sort of, you know, I think you have maybe, do you go for a coffee with a group, or is it?
Well, I think Richmond is one of those places, and because it's a true neighborhood. I don't know if the Sunshine Coast has quite the same thing, but I have attributed a lot of this feeling of community to the fact that most people walk everywhere.
Okay.
And so you're always reinforcing, oh, hello, and then the next thing you know, you think, oh, well, we have a block Christmas party. Let's invite everybody to come to that. And because over time you think, oh, they're not just walking through, they live here. And over time, I've probably known all of the shopkeepers up and down Swan Street and Bridge Road and that kind of stuff. So, and it's because I've lived there a long time, and most all of us walk everywhere or catch the tram or something like that. And then a lot of friendly people who said, oh, come on in, you're new here. And then you feel like you're going to return the favor over time. But it's a very close community, and the houses, at least in my part of Richmond, don't turn over that often. Starting to turn over some now, and you know, young families coming in, and so then we take all of them in too. And say,
that's awesome.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it is because people walk so much that you reinforce that introduction, or you have an opportunity to do that often. And often maybe, once every couple of months, but it's more often than if you were driving everywhere.
Yeah, no, I love that, because quite often this day and age, a lot of people won't know their neighbour.
That's right.
And
well, we require you to get a visa to even move into the neighborhood. We gotta know who you are before you come. That's right. That's right. And I can see the MCG from my house, so it's very good.
That's great. That's great. All right, thanks for sharing that hardship and some challenges that you've had. So next one's just one area of yourself that, where Matt McConaughey on Oscar's speech, he said, I think it was a metaphor rather than what happened, but he said when he was 15, he got asked who his hero was, and he said it was him in 10 years' time. Oh, and then he got to 25 years of age, same bloke goes, oh, so are you your hero yet? And he's like, no way, nowhere near it. It's me in another 10 years' time. Yeah. And this is a metaphor of he's always trying to get better, and hopefully by the day he dies, he's somewhat close to the person that he wants to be. So we're all about improvement as people and continuing to grow, no matter where we're at. Is there anything, going forward in your life that there's an area that you'd like to potentially, work on or get better at?
Well, I have some interests that I haven't been able to pursue because I've been busy.
Yeah.
And I've also started to realize that not being president of a football club, there's a lot more discretionary time. And one of the things that attracted me to law was I love reading and writing. And so I'd really pledged myself at some point I would take a year and write a novel. Now, that's very difficult for me to, well, I've got started, but that's it. But in the meantime, I've written a children's book that's been published, and I'm writing the second one. And that's just great fun, but it's that little creative stuff that isn't, law is creative in its own way, but it's the reading and writing stuff that I'm a great reader. And so you always think, oh, I wonder if I could write something. And during COVID, I kept a COVID diary and ended up getting that put together as a book.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, in 2020, Richmond won a grand final. So that's in my diary as well, as what was happening in Victoria during COVID. And so I just started thinking, oh, well, if you don't start now, it's not going to happen. And so anyway, I'm working on that, and I've got an idea for a mini-series, and I talked to someone, and they said, well, you need to develop it more. You've got a character, but you need a whole thing. So I'm working on 2 or 3 of those kinds of projects, and sometimes I think you gotta devote more time to it. But I think now that the second children's book is sort of into illustration and editing.
What's the book? What are the books called?
Well,
and can we get it?
My first book, the Avenue Bookstore has it, and RMIT is we're ordering more. They're going to sell them through the bookstore at RMIT, and the profits go to an RMIT scholarship.
Yeah, awesome.
But I have a cat that sits in the bathtub all the time, and so I thought, oh, that's kind of weird, and she'll sit in the bathtub for hours, and so I thought, oh, I might write a book about Dolly, the bathtub cat. And Dolly's named for Dolly Parton, whom I love.
Yeah.
And from my part of America, she's a very important person. Yeah. And so I wrote a book about Dolly and what she does sitting in the bathtub, and then she becomes a superhero cat at the end of it. And now volume 2 is Dolly's next adventure and that sort of stuff. So, but the illustrations are great. And someone at RMIT assisted me finding the illustrator, and she lives in Newcastle. Her name's Louise Wills, and she's great, and she's willing and excited about doing the second one. So I'll do that.
Good.
And
I had some thought around writing a children's book as well, just having kids
they're
myself, and just like thinking about, I reckon I could write something better than this.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to rhyme. It's just got to have some stuff in there and all that. So, and at first I thought, oh, maybe I'll, there's so many wonderful children's books that have that adult message in it, you know. And I thought, no, that's too. I'm just going to make this fun because she's such a fun, strange animal. And because sometimes I'll think, I wonder where she is, and I'll look, and she's sitting in the cold bathtub. And I think, how long have you been sitting there? Anyway, so I'd like to do more on that side of things, just because now I have some time, and I've always said to myself, why don't you do it? And so now it's time to put up or shut up. And so that's one of the things. And then I think, but as you get older and you get to my age, health is a big thing, and you need to realize what you're going to spend your energy on, and just maintenance takes a lot. So I think everybody needs to think more about health. And I am.
I'm really passionate about that, actually. So I love that.
Yeah, and it used to be that things bounced back much quicker than they do now. And I had a meniscus tear, and I went doing nothing, twisting my knee, getting off an airplane.
Oh, no.
Anyway, but I went to the orthopedic surgeon and they said, if you're an elite athlete, we might talk about surgery. But just go do some rehab and physio and all that stuff. And it came good. He was right. Anybody wants to avoid surgery. But I think just twist it like that and you think it'll get better, and then it didn't. Anyway, so I'm now aware that you need to do a lot of maintenance work to get to continue to do the things you want to do.
Yeah, cool. Nah, definitely. We're big on the health, and Chris in particular, you've had a huge interest in that over the last 8 to 10 years, and well educated in it. So with the I read this quote once from you from the Yellow and Black book, Richmond book, and for someone that's a part of a team or whether it's sporting or business, I think it's a great read.
It is,
Yellow and Black book. But one of the chapters on yourself, Peggy, one of the quotes said, "We should all make more of an effort to bring beauty into our lives." I just really loved that quote. I
remember that interview.
Yeah.
And Conrad Marshall, who wrote the book, makes everybody sound so good. But I did. It was in the context of having gone to a violin recital.
Yeah.
And how uplifting that can be. When you ask me things I like to do, I love live performances.
Yep.
More, as I said, Hamer Hall than Corner Hotel these days. But but I love going to the theater. I love seeing humans doing something in person.
Yeah.
And because I have no talent in that regard.
Yeah.
And I just love being, and sports a bit that way too, you know. True. That's another, being part of the crowd is the fun of it as well. And but I think that's another thing that we often have to work on is being sure we save some time to think big thoughts, to appreciate what other people can do, and whether it's painting or music or sport or any of that, the thing that lets you forget yourself for a little while and think of something grand.
I reckon, I don't know, have you been to many musicals? Because I think I love musicals. I haven't been to as many as I would have liked of late with commitment of 3 kids, and I need to make some time for my wife and I to be able to go do that, to be honest. It's going to be a healthy reminder to go catch a theatre performance sometime soon, I think. Because if I said that to people growing up, I was a bit of a sports jock, and to say that I genuinely love those, and had some great nights at some different musicals. The only one I didn't really like was Phantom of the Opera. I wasn't a big fan of that one.
I didn't go see that one.
Yeah. My friend, she was raving about so good, and it was the first one I saw. It was like fingernails down a chalkboard for me.
Say, I'm not going back.
Yeah.
Well, you find the thing that speaks to you.
Yeah, definitely. I got to read and write. Is there a particular reading that you like, fictional, non-fictional? And would you have a book that you'd potentially recommend to us or the audience?
I read about everything. Probably for relaxation, I tend to read novels. But I've been reading a bit of nonfiction as well, historical fiction, which is set in different times. But recommending a book is too hard. So I'll tell you what I'm reading now, or what I just finished.
Yeah, cool.
Nonfiction there's a book called Confederates in the Attic by Tony Horowitz, and it was written about 1999 or 2000. And his wife is Geraldine Brooks, who's the Australian who's won Pulitzer Prize. And anyway, Tony Horowitz was a journalist, and he suddenly died about 3 years ago. And Geraldine Brooks has been on TV since she's Australian, taught at Princeton, teaches Princeton. And I thought, she kept mentioning this book, and I thought, well, I'd like to read what he wrote. And so my local bookstore ordered it for me. And it was really interesting. He goes through, this is modern day at the time, late 90s in America. And he goes through the southern states, and it starts out going to Civil War reenactment battles. And then he gets more and more involved in talking to local communities, state by state, about why are they still fighting the Civil War?
Yeah.
Why is this still sort of a thing? And reading it with the benefit of what's going on now, and you could see it was the precursor to this disaffected people who had been left behind.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing insights. J.D. Vance, who's the current vice president, wrote a book called Hillbilly Elegy that was 2014 or 15, well before he was vice president. And this was well before that, and I thought this is around the whole big segment of the country as opposed to one family, which was J.D. Vance's family. So that is just really interesting. I'm not finished with it yet.
Quite disconnected over there at the moment in the US, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what you feel is how's that ever going to come back and have respect each other again? And when you talk about what are your values and how can you have some empathy for other people, it just seems to have all disappeared because it's been given permission to disappear. In fiction, the book I just finished was called The Correspondent. The Correspondent. And it's by Virginia Evans. And two friends recommended it to me separately. And it's a book that has sort of an approach that I like because it's all told through letters back and forth, where and as someone said, she's an aging lawyer, and she went to the University of Virginia, and I went, "Are you trying to give me a message here?" That's right. And but she sort of reveals herself over time and what's happened in her life, and but you sort of have to get it takes a while to get the pieces of the puzzle together because it's this letter and that letter, and she's a great reader. And so she's been writing also famous authors, and they write her back, and she's saved anyway. But it was a wonderful approach, and at the end I thought I couldn't wait for it to. I wanted to keep going. I didn't want it to end. Yeah. And I love that idea about I'll tell you the story over many years, but through letters.
Yeah. Because to be honest, I'm very much a non-fiction reader, and it's something that I want to do this year is read a fictional book. Because I'm just always about, if I'm going to look at something fictional, it'll be a movie. When I'm reading, I'm like, I want to, probably maximise my time. But I think, it's something I really want to explore in myself this year is reading a fictional book. So maybe The Correspondent.
Or maybe there'll be something that'll be entertaining as well as thought-provoking.
I think I'm very much similar. When I read, I want to learn stuff, and I don't know. I probably spend too much time doing that. I'll probably need to steer off that path a bit. My wife's huge on the fictional books. She really loves them.
I really got into historical fiction too because a friend of mine who reads everything said, "Oh, you got to read these books by Robert Harris." Yeah, I do read the Robert Harris books. He's got a trilogy on Cicero and what happened in Rome and the fall of Rome. It was and Julius Caesar, and it was just fascinating. But he takes a narrator and puts them in that story. They aren't one of the characters, but they know all the characters. And so this was Cicero's secretary who took down all his speeches, and so he was everywhere with Cicero. And so it talks about, and that's really fascinating.
Yeah, right.
And then there's one in the American early days, the American colonies, and there's another one. Anyway, I just sort of got caught up in those. So I read nothing but that for a while. No, I'm back to fiction and nonfiction. Okay. But those are all fiction really. I learned a lot.
Yeah, my wife loves fictional history. She would love those books, I think. Yeah. Cool.
With what we speak about on this podcast and what would be relevant, would you have any recommendations on someone we could try and get on here?
There are so many interesting people. There's someone who I quite admire, and I'm also on the board of Women's Housing, which I've been on the board about 13 or 14 years, and it's provides housing for women in difficult circumstances.
Yep.
Sometimes domestic violence, sometimes just destitute women coming out of prison. And there's a woman who's been the CEO for as long as I've been involved, Judy Line. She's also a Richmond supporter, so she's extra good.
Must be a legend.
But she's just experienced so much, and talk about kindness, but with a real drive to make things better. And she is from Wangaratta. We drove up there to go see the Richmond preseason game a few years ago. But she's someone who's experienced a lot of life, and yet keeps fighting for a better life for so many people. She's really an interesting person. And then this will all be Richmond supporters. And then my friend Waleed Ali, who we've gone to games together for like 20 years. He was still practicing law. I wasn't on the board of Richmond or anything like that. And we started going to games. And we still do. And he lives in Richmond, and he's a Richmond supporter. And so we... but he's just phenomenally interesting, I think. And
what was his name, sorry?
Waleed Ali.
Oh, yeah. He's
he does
I think I might have
ABC
met
sometimes.
met him with yourself.
It could have been, because we've gone to several things together.
He's a genuinely great person.
Yeah, he is. He certainly is. And smart and all those kinds of things. He did the summer ABC, but he is a great Queen fan. He knows everything about that. He's a great guitarist, as well as having a PhD and doing all those kinds of things. But anyway, he would have a lot of interesting things.
Awesome.
Another friend, my friend Bridie O'Donnell. Do you know Bridie? She was a champion cyclist. She's also a doctor, and she worked on. Was the first director of the Office of Women and Girls in Sport and Rec, which was the result of an inquiry I did for the state government that we needed a clearinghouse to be sure that women and girls got better facilities, that there were more women involved in coaching and all of that. And so she quit practicing medicine and took up that role because the public health aspect of it. She then worked on COVID. Was pulled in for that. She was 2IC for the Commonwealth Games, which I chaired for as long as it was there. Anyway, so she does a lot of interesting things. She's doing she's doing a segment now, a short segment on, I forget which day it is, on women sport or sport in general. For the ABC. But,
awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
They sound unbelievable.
Great recommendations.
Yeah, and she's not. She will go to Richmond games, but I can't say she's a Richmond supporter.
They're great recommendations. It's
And I might have left people out, so sorry. Everybody I know is interesting.
Yeah, they're just not Richmond supporters.
That's right. They don't pass that first test. Yes, that's right.
I've got a daughter who's 10 years of age, Peggy, and Chris has a daughter who's 11. They're great mates. They're looking to start some side hustles together.
Soap business going and trying to make soap and salt at the local market.
Gee, well, that's very industrious.
Yeah, and anyway, they're great young girls, and I just look at what you've done, and even hearing some of the stuff just then. Mentioned for facilities and change rooms and more female coaches, first female president, breaking down barriers at your law firm, the 100 years old first female lawyer there of a large organisation there in the US. Like, it's pretty phenomenal. You ever sit back and appreciate what you've done for women, and I think it's nice to reflect sometimes on the good we've done. Yeah.
I don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
You're sort of, I think you're caught between, it's nothing. Anybody could have done it. Or, aren't I really special? And neither one's exactly the case. I look back and think there were things I picked that I was determined to make a difference. And sometimes you don't realize how much determination it takes once you're there to keep pushing. But I think that the situation with women and moving to allow women to be fully formed adult human beings and function in the world like that. It's such a small ask, but it's so hard to achieve. And we're still working on it. It's like the people are patronizing people, and it's like, but we're adult beings. So just let us have access to all the same things that other people would take for granted. And sharing power, it turns out, is not as easy as you would think. Because people regard it as, oh, if you win, I lose. And so I think right now, I think the mission is to be sure we don't go backwards. That you come this far and you can't take anything for granted. And as we've seen in a number of countries around the world and the U.S., pulling back on women's rights seems to happen easily. And
do you think the wheels are still in the motion in the right direction here in Australia?
Yeah, I do. I do. And that's why I don't think that we can take for granted what we have is somewhere else, but there's still work to be done here. So I don't often think about too much of what's happened, because most of it, was a while ago. But I think if that, people often want an example to point to about that, you can't be what you can't see. And I say, well, it's just harder to be what you can't see, because whoever was first had to figure out how to do that. So I think if that helps someone to say, well, I didn't know that was a job, I think I'll go for that. And so I was really so happy that before I left as president, there were 4 women who were presidents of football clubs. And for a while I kept saying, oh, come on, people, so you've got to, because all the women on boards, we organized dinners and we'd all get together, and I said, who's going to do it? And it was like, oh, and I said, anybody in this room can do it. It's...
it does help that you were so successful in your tenure at Richmond, doesn't it? Everyone, the flavour of the month now. Hopefully, everyone wants a female president.
Well, that's right.
Well, what would you put the culture down to at Richmond? Like, I saw the 2014 speech that you did at the Best and Fairest night, I think. I watched it, and it was around. You said, we need to get these 5 things in order. There are 5 strategic pillars. Culture, supporters, and make them feel heard and cared for, and loved. Revenue.
Revenue.
Which you need, obviously.
In 2014, we needed a lot.
Facilities. You wanted a place that people felt comfortable.
And we needed to upgrade everything, which we're doing again now.
And enjoying where they're at, like if you've got better facilities, you enjoy coming in, being a part of it, and obviously it provides opportunities as well. And then lastly, you said if those 4 are in order, we get our 5th one of winning a premiership, and you ended up taking 3. So it looked like you got those first 4 right.
Yeah, that's easy to say and hard to achieve. That's it. But
you delivered on your speech, that's for sure.
Well, it also helps to have a great, like-minded group of people. The board was really good. Brendan was fantastic to work with. I think sometimes it's because we're both lawyers, but I think it's because we both analyzed and we're not too emotional about things. It didn't mean we didn't care, but when you're making decisions like that, you can't get caught up in the noise from outside. People say that all the time, but I quit reading things about sport. I quit listening to things about sport. It was like the opinion that matters is right here. And we need to do what we need to do. It doesn't mean you don't pay attention, but you can't let that be, we got more information than they have. So we got to make the decision that we think is right, because that's our job. We were elected to do this. And so I don't know of anything that, and this is true, it's not a false modesty, that I can't think of anything I did on my own.
Yeah.
It was all a like-minded group of people, and we all worked on it together. And as I came to accept and I guess understand over time, is there's a lot of power in unity.
Yeah.
And a lot of things can get done. Yeah.
I'd like to keep going on plenty more questions, but we're going to run out of battery here, by the way.
That's fine. I've talked too much.
I love what you've had to say, and yeah, especially like the culture part. You know, there's coups going on all the time, trying to override the board.
Talk about a hard time.
The easy decision would have been to get rid of Dimmer Hardwick at the end of 2016, and like the unity and all that has led to charge, but.
And all the work that went on behind the scenes. So that's it. And I remember saying to the media once, just because you don't see it doesn't mean there's not something going on. You know, just you don't think we're going to go out there. Yeah. Mm.
But we really, really appreciate you having us here at RMIT, Peggy, and catching up with us.
Well, it's good to see you again.
I think you're...
And meet you, Chris.
Yeah. I think you're one of the most well-rounded persons I've met just listening to you here, and the perspective you have on life and your self-awareness and empathy and kindness, gratitude. You know, you're volunteering, you make other people better. I'm so happy to have learnt more off you today. There's going to be a lot I take out of it personally, and I hope our listeners can take a lot out of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't say it any better. Absolutely appreciate your time today, Peggy. And yeah, I've taken a lot out of this, just listening to you speak. So a lot of wisdom there. You've lived a life. So yeah, appreciate it massively.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks heaps. Thanks everyone.